Hello, welcome back. This is the last video for week 3 and we'll be looking at the final module working with date, time, data. Let's go ahead and open that module as we look at the content under it. The date and time values in SQL are stored under the hood as numbers, some combination of ints and floats, but they are represented as strings. In the value, units are ordered in descending order from the largest length of time to the smallest, that is, year, then month, day, hour, and so on. Common data types for storing dates and times in SQL include the date, which stores dates in the format YYYMMDD. There's a dash in between. This means the year, the month, and the day. Also, we have date time, which stores data or date and time in the format YYY dash MM dash DD with a white space HH column MI full column SS, which stands for the year, the month, the day, white space, hour, minutes, and seconds. And we also have timestamp. Timestamp stores date and time in the formats hour, minutes, seconds, or a unique number or depending on the SQL engine. Now, there are some operations that can be performed or calculations that can be done with a date time object, one of which is called the interval data type. So, interval is just a way of checking the difference between two dates. In addition to this particular data type listed above that's associated with datetime object, SQL also has the interval data type. Intervals are used for measuring the period between dates and times. You can get an interval column through some form of declaration at the point of creation of the table and through performing arithmetic on existing date and time columns. We shall see this option once we get back to DB browser for SQLite. You can also get portions of data type objects. So in the context of data type SQL objects, there are two functions depending on the SQL engine that you're working with. It's called the sub str or the left. So as you can see, these are functions that accept some parameters or parameter. And this function allows us to actually do some kind of trimming or to extract certain information within the date or time data type. We use it by specifying the string and the indices for which to show data from. So the indices will be taken in as the parameter. We also have the between clause. Between clause in SQL is a Boolean operator that is used to find if a value is within a range of values or not. Yeah, so before we come back to the conclusion, let's get into DB browser for SQLite and see how to perform some of these mentioned functions and the clauses. Okay, I'm heading over to DB browser for SQLite and let's get to the last tab, working with date slash time data. All right. I would like us to take a look at the meta information of the employees table first of all before we go into exploring or writing queries. While running this particular query had returned this output, we have all listed columns under the employees table, starting with the column ID, the name, type, not null, df, lt underscore value, and the pk. So here the primary key on this table is the employee ID. And when you look through the list of columns that are displayed here, you've noticed that we have two columns with date time, which are the birth date column and the higher date column. So let us explore some queries for the date and time data. First of all, I'd like us to begin with the interval data type. And how to work with this is, first, let's write a query that shows the age of all employees when they were hired. So at hiring point or date, what are their ages? So this is a query that does that for me. I'm selecting the first name of the employees, the last name, and I'll take the difference between the hire date and the birth date. Of course, if you want to know the age of the employee at hiring time, simply subtract the date the employee was hired. Subtract the birth date of the employee from the date the employee was hired. That would give us the age when hired. And this whole selection of columns will be taken from the employees table. Then I want to order by three. Ordering by three here means order by the third column. So the third column is that interval data type, right? So that is other way to this is another method of ordering. You can order by name of column. You can also order by position of column. So this is a third column, and we want to order by that third column. So let's run the query and check out our output. So this is not giving us an output because I am trying to use this execute current line uh, command or button. So instead, I'll highlight all and run. So let's highlight all and run. Great. So that is an output we've gotten. As you can see, excuse me, we have first name, last name, age when hired. All right. And here it has returned the first name, Jane Peacock, was 29 when hired. Michael Mitchell was 30 when hired. Robert King was 34 when hired. Laura Callahan was 36. Steve Johnson, and so on and so forth. So these are the ages when hired. In my head, I am trying to imagine if I can actually do some form of concatenation by adding the word age to these numbers. I've not done this before. I just want to try it out to see if it will work. So I'm coming over to the interval column. This column where I actually performed the subtraction. I want to concatenate it with, I'll concatenate it with the word called age. Hoping that this will work, right? Let's add age to this. So what I'm saying here is it should return 29 age. No, 29 years old instead of having 29 age. Age doesn't make sense. 29 years old, you should add 30 years old, 34 years old, and so on and so forth. So let's hope this works. This is a string data. I'm concatenating it with another string data. Hoping we'll get a reasonable output. Let's run this. Oh, this doesn't work out fine. So it's not actually, it's not able to concatenate a string data with the age or date time data. So this is just me trying to see if that would work out well. So it didn't work out. Let's just take it out, and have a query output the way they are. All right, let's move on to the next stuff I would want us to look at together. So in this particular exploration, okay, this is just a summary of what I have above. That I said the age when hired column contains interval data type, that is in years. In this case, yes, interval data type in years. In other words, we subtracted two dates to obtain an interval value. However, this is not true in the case of addition. So you can't do addition and get an output. All right. Here, when you select first name, last name, hire dates plus 5 from employees, let us see. So I'm just limiting one, just want to return just one output. Let's see what happens. So here, the hire date. So what I'm going to do is let me also output the hire date of this particular employee, Andrew Adams, and then also output hire date plus 5. So do you see what's going on there? So the hire date is actually 2002, 8/14, at so time. By adding 5 to it, what do you notice? So when you add 5 to it, the 5 is just going to be added to the year, and it's returned only the year column. All right. So it has added 5 to the year column. So that is plus 5, higher this plus 5, which means that this person has stayed 5 years, for instance, in the company, and now he's now the year we are currently in is 2007. Okay, given the output of query that we've just gotten. So if we want to display all the employees and then see how this output works, as you can see, all the 2002 has been added, five has been added to that year, and we have 2007. 2003 is now up to 2008. 2004 is now 2009, and so on and so forth. So that is how to add a number to a date time object. Let's quickly learn how to get portions of datetime objects. This is where we would learn how to use the sub str function. What do we try to do here, or what are we trying to do in this case? So we want to write a query, right, for calculating the month-to-month revenue at Chinook. Let's calculate the month-to-month revenue at Chinook. So here's the query. We select the invoice date, 1, 7 as month. Then we round the sum of total to 2 decimal places as revenue, and that's all information is coming from the invoices table. Okay, so for us to understand what's happening here, I'm going to do something before running this particular query. Let's understand fully how the sub str query function works. So first of all, I'm selecting just the invoice date. Okay, then I would add the function to it, the sub query, the sub str function on the invoice date. Then this will be selected from the invoices table. Then let's run this query just to understand how the sub str query works. All right, great. So with this, you will see that for the invoice date, we have 2009-01. Now the subquery, the sub str rather of invoice date 17 means that I want to take out the invoice date, the first entry in the invoice date, and give me 7 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. When you count 2, from 2 to 1, there are 7 characters, including the dash. Now, but when we use invoice date 2, 7, let's see what output we'll get in this case. So for invoice date 2, 7, you notice that here I'm saying go into the invoice date column, begin with the second index and give me up to 7 characters. So it's starting from the second index, which is 0, and counting through 7 characters. All right, let's try out to see if there is a kind of backward indexing here. I hope this works. Okay. All right, so this is not actually working the way I expected. Okay, sometimes some programming languages like Python usually have a backward indexing. When you use negative 1, it's going to count from the back. All right, so let's just go ahead and work with this. When I run this query again, I want you to understand how this works. So for the sub str, it goes into the column, begins from the first character. The first character here is 2 in the first entry, and it will return 7 characters. It begins from the first index and return 7 characters. If I ask it to return only 4 characters, then what we should expect to see is just the year 2009, 2009, 2009, and so on and so forth. But when I ask it to start from the third index and return only 2 characters, so what you'll be seeing here will be 0909090909. Okay, So that is how this sub str function works. I hope you understand that now. So what we're doing here is we're going back to our query of calculating month on month revenue. We're subtracting, or I mean, we're taking the sub str function to extract the first 7 characters starting from index 1. I want to display that as month, right? uh then in fact that should be year month, right? Because we're taking year month. So let's call that year dash month. Then we're trying to sum the total and round it to 2 decimal places, as want to return that as revenue. Okay. We limit 10, group by 1, and order by 1. So group by 1, order by 1 means I'm grouping all the invoice. So we are doing it group by. So all the uh all the invoices on this particular date, all the invoices, or call them sales, all the sales on this particular date, go ahead and take the sum of it, take the sum of all of those, sales or invoice on that particular date, and return it as revenue. Then group it by the first column, this calculated column, and then order by that same column. Then give me just the first 10 output. So let's do this and run the query. Oh, you see that on this particular year and day, first January of 2009, we had revenue of $35.64. February of 2009, we had a revenue of $37.62. March of 2009, we had a revenue of $37.62, and so on and so forth, all up to the 10th month. So that is how to use the sub str function to get a portion of a datetime object. So let's move on. We can do the year to year revenue in a similar way. So if you want to do year to year revenue, so again, this sub str 1 comma 4 would just extract just the year column. All right, the year column, and we can then go ahead and add up the year on year. So when you run this query, you would notice that, oh, what am I doing? Excuse me. When I select and run the query, you notice that we have just a few years, 2009 all to 2013. So for the entire 20, excuse me, for the entire year 2009, we had a total revenue of $449.46. For 2010, we had a total revenue of $481.45, and so on. So from this, you can even check, see analytics, or an insight that between 2009 and 2004, that was a good, profit. We had an improved sales or improved revenue. But for 2011, the revenue dropped to 469 and went up a little to 477, and then it dropped again drastically to 450. So comparing all the years in this on the data set, the company did great or excellent in 2010, followed by 2012, and then for 2013 and 2009, they did very, very low. All right, so that is how to do some analytics by querying data sets from using SQL. Okay, let's quickly talk about the between function. So here to learn about, or to see how to use the between, I would like us to write a query that returns employees that were hired after this year and before this year. Employees that were hired after 2002 of the 8th month, on the 14th day of the 8th month, between the employees that were hired on the 17th day of the 10th month in 2003. So all we need to do is to just write the query, select all asterisks from employees where hire dates between this year and this year. That is just it. Just go ahead and write it. This is English words, that's English search keys. So when we run this query, I'm expected to get the outputs of all the queries who were hired between the given year. So we have just two of them. These are the two employees that were hired between um I think that is August, right? Of 14th of August and 17th of October. So those are the two employees that were hired between those dates. Finally, let's achieve the same results using some standard comparison. So instead of using the between function, we want to use the where clause with operator greater than or less than. This can be written in this way: select asterisk from employees where hire date is greater than the starting year and hire date is less than the ending year. If I should run this query, we would see that we have the same output as a initial output that was displayed. And so that is it for date, time, data types. Thank you for watching this video. Let's quickly conclude. In conclusion to what we've discussed, the concepts covered here in this section will be helpful in cases where you have to create your own database tables. Although not comprehensively, we've covered some of these concepts: how to view table metadata in SQLite. This is particularly useful in cases where we need to access the data types of each columns, data type of table columns. We've also talked about common column data types in SQL, such as numeric data. We've looked at the integer, serial, decimal, real, double, precision. Text data, where we talked about the varchar, and so on. Then we also discussed about, just in this video, we talked about date time data, where we cover the dates, date time, and interval. So that is where we're going to end this particular lesson. And I say thank you once more for watching this. I wish you all the best in your training and your studies. See you again in during the weekend for our live class. I can't wait to see every one of you. Do have a wonderful day ahead. Bye bye.